Hi, I'm Chester Elton, co-author of several books with my writing partner Adrian Gostick, and I want to thank the IOC, the Institute, for inviting me to share some of the work we've done with you today. Adrian and I have written several books together, and I want to tell you a little bit about our journey on why we wrote the book I want to talk to you about this morning, which is All In, How the Best Managers Create a Culture of Belief and Drive Big Results. Our work started in the area of recognition, reward and recognition in the workplace. A very simple premise. We wrote a book called The Carrot Principle, and it's all about when somebody at work does something great and it's noticed and celebrated, they'll do it again, they'll do it better, and it drove engagement and it drove energy. Our latest book, What Motivates Me, is all about what are your motivators at work. But the book I want to talk to you about today and the research that accompanies it is All In. It's culture-based. And here's why it's important. In business today, there are very few differentiators left. And as you study with the IOC and you're working through your education, there are certain things that are tough to learn in the classroom but are pretty evident in business. And one of them is culture. Now, culture is kind of an emotional thing. We've been trying to think of different analogies to introduce culture, and I think this is a pretty good one. It's like when you go to buy a house. Now, as you start to build your careers and get married and have kids and so on, early in your career, you're most likely going to move quite a bit. And that's what we did. My wonderful wife, Heidi, and I, early in my career, we moved a lot. And so we had to buy a lot of different houses. And the routine is pretty interesting. You know, you have your list of criteria. You want good schools, safe neighborhood, easy commute, so many bathrooms, not many repairs, whatever your list is, right? And then the realtor takes you to 50 houses. Well, after a while, it gets to be a bit of a blur, right? But it's really interesting. Every time we bought a house, we had this experience, that we would walk into the house and we knew it was the house. Well, I should rephrase that. My wife knew that it was the house. I personally never had that experience, but there was this emotional connection to the house. And it might not have been in the right neighborhood, it might be on a busier street or whatever. But that was where we're going to, raise our kids and build our careers. Well, a culture in business is very much like that. And it's interesting, you'll know this when you go into a retail establishment or a bank or whatever. You'll walk in and you just have this feeling that this place is hopping. These people like working here, they're competent, they're knowledgeable. Go to an Apple store, for example. You walk in and it's like Apple Palooza, right? They have kind of redefined retail. You go in, they're happy, they're excited, they know their products. You can talk to a genius at the Genius Bar. By the way, if they ever offer you a genius, always say yes. I mean, the guy's a freaking genius. Why wouldn't you talk to him? You know what I'm saying? But the idea there is they overwhelm you with customer service. I always ask people, how many people work at an Apple store? Nobody knows. They just keep coming out of the back. Do you know what I'm saying? But there's a culture and a feeling that you get when you walk into an Apple store that you don't get in other retail places. Well, that's driven by culture. And it's one of the few differentiators left in business. You know, your products can be replicated, your pricing can be replicated, your commission structures, even your buildings and your locations. Culture, really hard to replicate. It's driven by your mission, vision, values. It's driven by how you treat each other at work. And it's something that you need to nurture every day. And this is what a lot of business leaders don't understand. Your culture isn't the holiday party at the end of the year, right? It's how you feel when you come to work every day. When you wake up in the morning, are you excited to go to work because of what you do and how you do it and who you get to do it with? Or are you more likely, to hit the snooze button and say, hey, look, I can get another 20 minutes of sleep. If I show up late, nobody's going to care. That's culture. Now, if you don't nurture culture, a culture will create itself. And it's probably not the one you want. Well, in All In, we looked at a lot of research, which is important. 350,000 surveys, which is way more than you need, by the way. Done by Towers Watson, 2009, 2010. Largest study ever done on culture in the workplace and how it impacted performance and a lot of other business metrics that we'll talk about. But more than that, more than just the data and the case studies, we created what we call a transferable model, the roadmap, if you like. And in that roadmap, there are transferable ideas, and that's what's key. Because I'm going to talk to you about restaurants, banks, rental car companies, whatever. That may not be the industry that you go into. However, the principles that these companies applied are what's important. Can I take that principle, take it to where I work, and make where I work a better place today than it was yesterday? Does that make sense? So in the middle of the model, and you'll notice the model is a wheel. There's gears in the middle, and then there's 7 steps around the outside. I want to talk in this segment about the center of the roadmap. And it's what we call E plus E plus E. Enablement, energy, and engagement. Okay, so let's start with engagement. A lot of the work that we did with the carrot principle and our early work in recognition, we thought, hey, engagement is everything, right? If you can get to engagement, it'll cure all your ills, right? Performance goes up, discretionary effort goes up, customer satisfaction goes up, which is all true. And a lot of work has been done around engagement. One of the big ahas we had when we looked at the data was around enablement and energy, the other 2 E's. That engagement was great, and that's, my discretionary effort and so on. But when you added enablement and you added energy, productivity literally doubled. Low engagement companies operating income around 10%. High engagement companies about 14%, which is great. You add enablement and energy, it literally doubles to 28%. So those are the other 2 pieces of culture that are so important. Yeah, I want to drive engagement. But unless I enable people, give them the tools to do their job and energize them, I'm leaving a lot of productivity on the table. So, engagement. How do I feel when I come to work, right? Will I give my discretionary effort? Will I come in early, stay late? Will I take the course? Will I move for the company? That's when you know you've got high engagement. Enablement is different. Enablement is, do I have the tools to do my job? Let me give you a quick example. Back to the Apple Store. Adrian Gostick, my co-author, has a teenage son, Tony. Tony has an iPod. It stops working. He's a teenager. Who knows what he did with it, right? So they go down to the Apple Store, and the guy says, hey, can I help you? He says, yeah, look, I got this iPod. It stopped working. Maybe you can do that Genius bar thing and fix it, right? So the guy takes the iPod and he's playing with it and he's playing with the wheel. As he moves it from one hand to the next, he actually drops it, okay? And he goes, oh, I'm so sorry. Let me go to the back and I'll get you a new one. So he goes to the back, he comes back with a new iPod and he says, here you go, Tony. Here's your new iPod, enjoy it. And Adrian says, great, how do I pay for that? He goes, oh, no. I dropped it. That's my bad. The iPod's on me. Well, Adrian is thinking, this is going to come out of his pay. And when he came in, the iPod wasn't working, and it wasn't working from here all the way to the floor, you know what I'm saying? And the guy says, oh, no, don't misunderstand. It's not coming out of my pay. That's our policy. I dropped it, you get a new iPod. I mean, that's enablement, right? And I was laughing with Adrian. I said, I would have showed up the very next day talking to that same kid, handing him my laptop. Now, what I love about this story is, how long did it take that Apple employee to make a mistake right? Right? It was a nanosecond. He knew he dropped it. He knew how to replace it. He knew what was going on. And I'm sure there was some accountability. I'm sure that he had to tell his manager, look, there's an iPod missing from inventory, right? Here's what happened. And I'm sure his manager said, you did the right thing. Don't make it a habit. I don't want to see a whole line of people lined up with their iPods and laptops waiting to talk to you. No, give it to that kid. He'll drop it. You'll get a free one, right? That's enablement. So ask yourself, in whatever job it is that you have or whoever you're managing or who's ever on your team, do you know what the rules are? Do you know what you can do to make the customer happy? Do you know what you can do as far as innovation? What risks can you take? And what risks can't you take? In other words, don't be promising people free iPods if you can't give them a free iPod, because when you break trust with a customer, when you don't keep your promise, well, everything goes haywire, right? So enablement. Got it? Engagement, discretionary effort, enablement. Do I have the tools to do my job? The third one, the third E, my favorite, energize. How do you energize people around your business? And we're going to go through the 7 steps here really quick. The first one is what we call the burning platform or your noble cause. And I think energy in the workplace is very much aligned with that. Again, think of culture as that differentiator, and the differentiator is emotional. So what is it that we do? That's easy to define. What is it, or how do we do that? That should be fairly easy to define. So what do we do and how do we do it? Any company should be able to tell you that. Good companies can tell you that. Great companies can tell you why they do it. That's the difference. Not just what I do and how I do it, but why. Let me give you an example. Hard Rock Cafe. I'm sure many of you have been to a Hard Rock somewhere in the world. They're everywhere, right? And hopefully you had fun, right? You went in, rock and roll, burger and a shake. The Hard Rock Cafe, right? Let me ask you this. Did you go for the food? Think about that. Did you go for the food? The food's okay. The food's good. I mean, it's a burger, it's a shake, it's nachos, whatever. It's a Caesar salad. People don't go to the Hard Rock for the food. They go for the experience. And here's why. At the Hard Rock Cafe, part of their culture is they believe this. And listen to this. I think it's brilliant. They believe there's a little bit of rock star in everybody. Think about that for a minute. There's a little bit of rock star in everybody. You know, you got tattoos that you don't show your friends, right? Every one of us was this close to having the mic, having the entourage, being on stage. Well, think about how that changes the dynamic of that workplace. So when people come through the door at the Hard Rock Cafe, the employees don't say, hey, that guy looks hungry, or oh, that looks like a birthday party. They say, hey, there's a rock star coming in. We're going to treat them like a rock star. When they want to rock out, we're going to rock with them. And I'll give you a specific example. This was years ago. I worked for years and years in New York City, in Manhattan. And back then, the Hard Rock was on 57th between 8th and 9th. Now it's in Times Square. And I don't think it's as much fun, but that's just my opinion. Every now and again, we'd take off, burger and a shake, little rock and roll. And they had an upper balcony and a lower bowl. We were in the upper balcony when in the lower bowl, there are a bunch of university students, a bunch of college kids celebrating whatever. Music comes on. It's Love Shack by the B-52s. It's, funny what you remember, right? Love Shack by the B-52s. One of the college kids literally jumps up on his table and starts to dance. Think about that. In a restaurant, kid jumps up, he's dancing on the table. In most restaurants, what do you think would happen? They would get him off the table, right? Escort him out, encourage him to never come back. But if you think your patrons are rock stars, how do you treat them? Because here's what happened. Literally, his waitress, not only did the wait staff start to applaud and cheer him on, she actually jumped up on the table and danced with him. It was hysterically funny. Couple of things happened there, right? They create a memory for this kid he will never forget. Heck, I didn't forget it. It's 30 years ago for me, and I wished I was that kid, right? They create a memory, but they treated him like a rock star because their culture is there's a little bit of rock star in everybody. So what you do and how you do it, great. Why do you do it? What is your cultural differentiator? Take a minute and think about that. What is it that you do? How do you do it? But most importantly, why? How do you drive that energy behind it? Give it some thought. Let me talk to you about the 7 steps. And I want to talk to you about the first 2. The first one is burning platform. We also call it your noble cause. What are you doing to change the world? What is it that gets your people excited about coming to work? Had a great friend, he's moved away. I hope we're still great friends, actually. And he was a researcher, a chemist at Merck Pharmaceutical. Now, when Dick was there at Merck, it was the darling of Wall Street, pharmaceuticals, and it was literally a place you could print money. And I would say to him, hey, Dick, you got to love working at Merck with all your profit sharing and everything. You're going to make millions. And he said, yeah, we probably will do pretty well, but that's not why I work there. And I said, really? Why? Why do you work there? He says, because every day when I get up and go to work, I work with an amazing group of people, and we work together to cure the world's diseases. That is perfect. He doesn't go to work so that he can impress his colleagues or so that he can get a raise or a promotion. He goes to work because he's focused every day on curing the world's diseases. Is that a noble cause? Is that a burning platform? Absolutely. Many of you are probably familiar with the online retailer Zappos. Went from zero to over $1 billion in 9 years. Ridiculous growth. And did it without a lot of online advertising and all that kind of stuff. Pretty much word of mouth, right? Not deep discounts either, really, when you think about it. We went and we got to know their culture, and it's fascinating. It's kind of zany, you know, like they dress up like Elvis. Their cubicles are like spaceships. It's crazy. But it's interesting if you think about what they do and how they do it. They sell shoes online. They ship them out of their warehouses in Nevada and Arizona. But if you ask a Zappos employee what they ship, they don't say shoes. They say happiness. Their noble cause is we want to cheer people up. We want to brighten people's day by sending them exactly the shoes they want. If you ever talk to them on the phone in their call centers, it's like, hey, you know, my name's Chester. I am having a zaptastic day. What can I do to wow you today? I mean, they're having more fun than they should be allowed. They have free shipping, free returns. I mean, it's one of the easiest online experiences you'll ever have. They have redefined customer service online. But it isn't because they want to have the fastest growth, or, you know, Amazon's actually bought them now, and Amazon was great. They said, we're going to learn from you and leave you alone because we don't want to mess with your, here's that word again, culture. They've figured it out, and it's phenomenally successful. So again, this idea of burning platform, noble cause, what's yours? What's your why of work? Think about that for a minute and see if it makes sense. Step 2 is customer focus. Really good cultures are very good about paying attention to the nuances of their customers. You know, they're highly engaged. You may have noticed this. You do an online purchase and they'll send you a little questionnaire. You fly. I've flown almost 2 million miles with United Airlines. They're quizzing me all the time. They want to know what my opinion is of business class, of the check-in experience, of on time and takeoff and landing. They want to know, how do you like the way we handle your bags? I mean, I'm the guy they want to talk to. I fly well over 100,000 miles a year. So they're interested, you know. How did you like your experience at the restaurant, and so on. And they'll even incentivize you to answer the surveys. One of the key things about focusing on the customer is, are you listening? And are you doing the research, and are you following the data? You know, we all have preconceived notions. It's one of the things actually Adrian Gostick and I are very proud about with this work is, with the Towers Watson data, 350,000 surveys, we had some preconceived notions, but we wanted to be very careful to follow the data. Where does it take you? You're going to have this sense that, look, we've always done it this way. Why not keep doing it that way? If it ain't broke, you know, don't fix it. But really, in today's environment, because business and technology changes so quickly, you've got to be thinking constantly, how would I put myself out of business? How is my competitors taking my customers? And maybe I should be doing the same thing, because the only thing that you know for sure is what works today may not work tomorrow. And that customer focus is so interesting. Now, when it comes to the customer focus, we're going to talk in some of the other steps about what's an employee's role in that. We've done some very interesting work with Avis Budget Rental Car. And we got this philosophy from literally the way they've crafted their business, but that the customer experience will never exceed the employee experience. Now, let me say that again. And if you're going to write something down, write that down. The customer experience will never exceed the employee experience. So the whole idea of the cultural differentiator is, I want to create as engaging and enabled and energized employee experience, because that will translate to the customer. Ritz-Carlton, famous for their great customer service. Their philosophy around the customer is, we are ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. Think about that for a minute. We are ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. They let their employees stay at their hotels and have the experience from the customer side. And if I want my customers to be treated as a lady and a gentleman, then I better be treating my employees that way too. And think about what that means. I mean, seriously, think about that. So how am I treating my employees? If I'm screaming and yelling at them, if I'm nickel and diming them, if I'm not concerned about them as the whole employee, you know, that work-life balance thing you hear so much about, or their family commitments, or their career progression, then how can I expect them to take an interest in my customers if I don't take an interest in them? That customer focus. So we use, you know, these different headlines for these different steps. They may mean different things to different people. What does customer focus mean to you, and how would you best define it with your team? Take a minute and think about that. Okay, next step. Step 3, agility. It's not the biggest and the strongest that survive anymore. You know that, right? I mean, we've seen huge institutions come crumbling down. You know, the economic downturn. Boy, if there was ever, you know, a moment in time when you looked at, you know, organizations, big banks and big automobile entities and so on. Just because you're really big, there's no guarantees. And I always like to use the analogy, you know, the dinosaurs were the biggest and baddest animals on the planet. Well, they're not around anymore. The cockroach is. You know, the cockroach, he survives, right? He finds a way, he adapts, he's agile. And in business, you have to be the same. All those things we talked about with focusing on the customer, burning platform, our why of work, that all comes into agility. You've got to be constantly adjusting. New markets, new competitors. The global marketplace now is remarkable. I mean, China comes in, South Korea comes in, Vietnam becomes a player. Call centers are all of a sudden in India, you know, in Mexico. What are you looking in the marketplace? And this is where you have to be a student of your industry. You know, make sure that you've got the latest information. And of course, now with everything you can Google and all the different places you can go for information. Are you building your networks? Are you on LinkedIn? Have you got a following? Are you reading those blogs, those 800-word blogs that, you know, are giving you updates as to what's going on in your industry and other industries and business in general? And pay attention to politics. Let me tell you something. If you're a business owner and you're not paying attention to the, you know, Affordable Health Care Act, Obamacare, whatever you want to call it, you're an idiot, because that is going to impact your business. You know, what are the latest and greatest onboarding and hiring practices? Are you investing in your people and their education and their capabilities? I mean, business is complicated. You know, stay on top of it. Make sure you're a student of your industry. Look at case studies. Where did things go wrong? Where did things go right? How did Zappos do it, right? What went wrong in the automobile industry? How is it that all of a sudden there are foreign car manufacturers that are the biggest in the world when American cars dominated the industry for years and years? Go back to those old studies. They're still relevant. Know your history, because it does repeat itself. And be agile. And what I mean by that is, are you willing to take risks? Are you willing to think outside the box? Are you willing to reinvent yourself? And here's what becomes very interesting, and I'll illustrate it with a story in just a second. What, you know, online businesses taught us very quickly is that you need to take risks, and that you're going to fail, and that you need to fail quickly and then move on. Innovation is, you know, like we say, well, we're agile, we're innovative. And I love the word innovation. It means different things to a lot of different people. I worked at a company for many years, and they wanted us to be innovative, right? And so we wrote books, and we developed training, and we had bestseller campaigns, and we spoke at conferences all over the world. And we came up with an idea that we thought was kind of innovative. And we would, where it was appropriate, we would take our customer database and we would blast it out to all our customers, and we would offer them a free chapter in our new book. It was a way to get our business philosophy out there, get some engagement, get some feedback, and so on. Well, we made every possible mistake in how we did that. We didn't scrub the data as well as we should have. We should have run it by more executives before we launched it, and so on. And there was some employee emails from a very large customer that were not supposed to be in that database that were. And with the privacy issues and everything, it became a big deal. We failed, right? Okay. We had done and this is my opinion because I did it, and so I should be proud of it, but we did a whole series of amazing things that the company had never done before. We made this mistake, and it was a big one. I'm not going to minimize it, and we owned it immediately. We got to with the customer, we scrubbed the database, we got the files, we put them in cement, we dropped them in the river. I mean, we did everything humanly possible. Now, we didn't lose any customers, we didn't lose any money, but it was embarrassing, and we embarrassed the company, right? Made it right with the customer. The leader of that company at the time was very supportive, but then he came back to us and he said, look, at the next leadership meeting, the next leadership retreat, I think it's going to be really important for you and Adrian to get up in front of the entire leadership and apologize. Apologize for your mistake. And we did. So we got up and we said, look, here's what we did. So very, very, very sorry. It won't happen again. Well, think about that for a minute. You know, business is all about messaging. So on one hand, you say, be innovative, be cutting edge, push the envelope. But if you make a mistake, you're going to have to stand up in front of everybody and apologize. You know, it was kind of embarrassing for a few minutes, I mean. But let me ask you this, and think about this for a minute. While it was embarrassing for me and Adrian to stand in front of our peers and say, look, we blew it, it'll never happen again. What do you think the message was to every other executive in that meeting? Do you think innovation took on a different meaning for them? Do you think that they're sitting there thinking, oh yeah, I'll push the envelope. Hey, I want to be innovative. Now, the message is be innovative, but don't make a mistake. And you know, that's not innovation. Innovation is we're going to make mistakes. Now, you don't want to make big mistakes. You don't want to take down the whole company. But it's really interesting, isn't it? So when you talk about agility and innovation, be a student of your industry, but be willing to make mistakes and make it safe for people to make mistakes, because that's going to be a lot of things that you learn and develop are going to be in your mistakes. Agility, innovation. What does that mean to you? Take a minute, ponder it, think about it, talk with your neighbor, find out what your definition is, because depending what industry you're in, it'll mean different things to different people. Step 4, share everything. This is really all about communication. You know, if you're in an organization where communication is lagging or communication is corrupted or there isn't a lot of trust in the workplace, this is a difficult thing. Sharing everything has everything to do with what are my relationships at work, and particularly with my immediate supervisor, with my coworkers. Do I feel safe at work to share new ideas, to share customer feedback, to share how I'm feeling, right? It's really interesting. There are some industries, and we've done some work in the financial industry, where you really can't share everything. Do you know what I'm saying? It would be irresponsible, in some cases illegal, to share information about a merger or acquisition or a downsizing or whatever. The thing that great leaders do is they're very open about what they can share and what they can't. And that's okay. Look, I'll tell you when I can. Right now, it would be irresponsible. Just share it with them. When you think about the best places you've had to work, they were places of high trust. High trust is high communication, right? It's high communication. We have a lot of back and forth. Great managers will take time at the beginning of the day and the end of the day to touch base with his or her employees, right? They'll have, at Zappos, they have what they call Zuddles. You know, instead of a huddle, everything starts with a Z, or if you're Canadian, a Z, right? I'm having a Zaptastic day, we're having a Zuddle, whatever. Where they get together. Now, they don't sit down. It's 5 minutes. They get together. Hey, share with me what's going on. Tell me what happened. They may have some data. They may have some opportunities to recognize somebody's been doing a great job. This idea of constantly talking. Now, there are 4 generations in the workplace. You've got baby boomers, you've got Gen X, you got Gen Y, you got millennials. You communicate to those people in different ways. You know, your students, my guess is, many of you have never ever written a full-length letter, put it in an envelope, put a stamp on it, and mailed it to anybody. You text, you Facebook, you Instagram, whatever it is. And that's fine. And communicating with you, that may be the best way for me to do it. You know, with my kids, we text. They won't pick up the phone. Well, see, I'm a boomer. I'm like, pick up the phone, right? I want to hear your voice. I want to make sure you know what we're doing. Well, I know what you did. You texted me, right? Or you emailed me or whatever. So understand what your audience is and how you're going to communicate with them. How you put information out in your organization. Is it a blast email? Is it a company blog? Is it a town hall meeting where it's stored in video bits like we're doing with you today, little 5, 10, 15-minute bits? Make sure you know what is the best way to communicate, what's going to be the most effective, and it may be all of the above, by the way. You're going to have to touch different people in different ways. But this idea of sharing everything. Now, when you do, make sure that it's focused back on that noble cause. What are my mission, vision, and values? Are there things going on in the industry? Don't say, hey, how about that game last night? Or whatever, do you know what I mean? You've only got so much time to get people's attention. Make sure you use it wisely. That's sharing everything. That's being a great communicator. That's making sure everybody's on the same page. And that builds a culture of trust and conversation, and that becomes very valuable. Share everything. Think about it. It's powerful. Next, partner with your talent. Okay, now, partnering with your talent, I think now is more important than ever because people don't stay in one place a long time. My dad worked in the radio industry, 35 years, Selkirk Holdings, went from being a reporter to being on air to running radio stations all over Canada. Now, you come in, it's 2-3 years, you have a great experience, an opportunity comes, you take off, right? Your skill set becomes very portable, okay? So when I'm partnering with my talent, I want to make sure that your experience with me is something that you can value down the road. And we had some great leaders that taught us how to do this. Scott O'Neill works in the entertainment sports industry, ran Madison Square Garden, NBA. He's now the CEO of the New Jersey Devils, my hockey team. Actually, my hockey team is anywhere where Scott goes and he'll give me free tickets. That's an aside. Scott sits down with his people and he says, tell me where you want to be in 5 years. Think about that. It's a great question. You talk about communication, sharing everything. Where do you want to be in 5 years? I want to be a marketing director at a Major League Baseball team. Great. Here's what we're going to do. We have a lot of people come to the stadium for the games. And as marketing people come in, I'll make sure that you have time with them. If the baseball guys come in, if the Yankees or the Mets or whatever are at a game, I'll make sure you have time with them. And here's what I want from you. I want world class every day. You give me world class every day, I will do everything in my power to make sure in 5 years, you're the marketing director of a Major League Baseball team. Who would make that deal? You know what I'm saying? And he keeps his promises. If you're in the sports industry, you know who Scott O'Neill is. In fact, it's kind of well known. You want to build a career, go work for Scotty. You'll learn a lot. Now, another guy that we learned from, and this was when it came to your annual, quarterly, semi-annual review, whatever that is. And I've always laughed about these because when you go for your review, the first 5 minutes are great. You know what I'm saying? First 5 minutes are lights out because that's when they tell you how great you are. The next 55 minutes, not so great. That's where they tell you all the things that you need to improve on. Well, Quint Studer, who does a lot of work in healthcare, came up with these 4 great questions on partnering with your talent. And they go like this. Instead of coming in and going through the litany of good, bad, red light, green light, amber, whatever, he says, look, I want to know first off, have we kept our promises to you? Think about that. That's a great question. Not what have you done for me lately, but have I kept my promises? We said that we would give you these opportunities and blah, blah. Have we kept our promises? And then you shut up and you listen. Secondly, what is it you think that we do really well around here? I want a perspective of a line employee or a supervisor, whatever your job is. What do we do well? I may think that we're great on on-time delivery. You may think that we're really good about cost containment. It's a great conversation. Third question, what have you seen in other jobs you've had here and other places that if we did here would make us better? Give me some innovative ideas. Excellent question. And the last one, and this is key, have we done anything that might cause you to leave us? Fascinating, right? Because turnover is not necessarily a bad thing. You've got the wrong people in the wrong places. But when you have good employees, you want to keep them. And if there's a little something that's quirky and you can correct it, better to keep them. It's a lot easier to keep a great employee than to find another great employee. So 4 questions again. Have we kept our promises? What do we do well around here? What have you seen in other jobs that if we did would make us better? And have we done anything that might cause you to leave us? That's a great way to partner with your talent. And then I always like to add the 5th question from Scott, which is, where do you want to be in 5 years? And let's put together a plan and help you get there, whether it's here or somewhere else. And I will tell you that the hallmark of a great culture isn't just how you welcome people to your organization. It's how you say goodbye. The way you say goodbye to people says so much about who you are in your culture. If people leave mad, if you've got to bring in lawyers for a non-compete and a non-disparage and all that stuff, you should take a look at your culture. You know, we were working with an engineering company. A good third of their leadership had left at some point and come back, and they were welcomed back. And some had gone to competitors. Think about that for a minute. You know, when you partner with your talent, what does that mean? It's just not a great beginning. It's a great ending, and it's a great in-between. Partnering with your talent. Great companies do it. Average companies don't think about it much. They figure, hey, I'm paying you. You should show up. I'm going to jump to number 7, which is accountability. And then I'm going to come back to number 6, which is root for each other. Accountability. Sometimes this is a core value that is really interesting with organizations. It becomes a cudgel, the big stick, because they say, look, you promised me you were going to do it, and by gosh, we hold people accountable here. Well, then, all of a sudden you don't want to promise anything, right? Think of ways to hold people accountable in a positive way. And I'm going to give you a great example of a leader that we found with Ava's Budget Rental Car in Dallas. The guy's name's Carlos Aguilera. And Carlos, as he grew up in business, had interesting bosses, right? And he decided when he became a boss, he wanted it to be different. Now, if you talk to people at Ava's Budget and you mention the name Carlos Aguilera, by every measure of a great leader, that's him. High engagement, low turnover. High customer satisfaction, low breakage. High margins, high profitability, great review. I mean, the guy's a superstar. So I got the chance to talk to him. We interviewed him for our book. And I said, Carlos, of all the things you do, what is the one thing that you do to get the best out of your employees? He manages like 400 or 500 people. He's got a lot of responsibilities, a lot of kiosks at the airports and so on. He said, of all the things I do, I think 10 pennies is probably my best management idea. And I said, okay, what do you do with 10 pennies? He said, look, when I grew up in business, I had a lot of managers that were really quick to point out what I did wrong, really slow to point out what I did right. I didn't want to be that kind of manager. So to remind myself to look for the good, I put 10 pennies in my left pocket every morning, and I set a goal to have 10 positive interactions. Just great little customer service, great little whatever, right? And then every time I do that, I take a penny from my left pocket, put it in my right pocket. If I get to lunch and I've got 8 pennies in my left pocket, I'm not doing my job. I know it sounds silly and it's very simple. I've actually had organizations where the president has mailed everybody a little Ziploc bag with 10 pennies in it. Awesome, right? Now, let me ask you this. When Carlos shows up and he's the boss, are people happy to see him? Yeah, they are. Now, does it mean that every time Carlos shows up that everything's unicorns and rainbows? No. He's got to have tough conversations with people, but he's earned the right to do that, to hold them accountable, because they know that not just when they make a mistake are they going to get called out, but when they do something great, they're going to be called out. Ava starts every morning with a blast email with a great customer service story. We try harder. And the message is, we hope your story is the one that we tell tomorrow. This is what happened in New York or Chicago or Paris or London, whatever. What's happening in Biloxi is just as important. What's happening in Toledo is just as important, because we want to live that promise, which is we try harder. And we're going to hold you to that standard. But when you do something right, we're going to be just as quick. Now, Carlos doesn't know this, but the Harvard School of Business actually did a study as to what the ratio of positive to negative is in a positive workplace. Okay? So I was working with a group of managers and I said, what do you think the ratio should be, positive to negative? 1 to 1, 2 to 1, 3 to 1. One of the leaders said, I think it should be 1 to 1, that's balance. For every compliment, there's a criticism, right? And I said, just for fun, try that at home and see how that works out for you. Because for every compliment there's a criticism, you might have a situation where you're taking your wife, your spouse, your girlfriend to a nice restaurant, right? You get all dressed up. And she comes down the stairs and says, how do I look? And you say, wow, that color on you, your eyes just sparkle. Just sparkle. Does make you look fat, but the color is great, but it does make you look fat. So that's 1-to-1, right? Let me ask you something. What are your odds of getting to the restaurant or continuing that relationship or sleeping in that house that night? Very small. 1-to-1 is negative. 2-to-1 is negative. 3-to-1 is neutral. 4-to-1 starts to become positive. 5-to-1 is ideal. In fact, Harvard says it's 5.6, which is, it's Harvard, it's 5.6932 or something. University of California did a study and said in married couples, if your ratio is about 1-to-1, you're divorced. If it's 5-to-1, you're probably happily married. So not only does it work in the business place, it works, at home as well. So what is your ratio? 10 pennies helps you keep your ratio in accountability very, very positive. Accountability. Is it a positive in your workplace? Is it a negative? If you do it right, it opens a lot of doors. You do it wrong. When you walk in the door, people cringe. My dad used to have a saying, see that guy? He can brighten up a room just by leaving it. So what kind of leader do you want to be known to be? Trust me, when Carlos Aguilar shows up, people are happy. Think about what accountability means. Is it positive? Is it negative? Does it make your business better or does it inhibit people's ability to share and make promises? The last one. Step 6. Out of order, I know. Root for each other. Do we cheer for each other? This is the secret sauce. If out of all these little things we've talked about, of the 3 E's and the 7 steps, if this is the one thing you take away, it'll be great. It'll make you a much better leader. And it's this. In every great culture we studied, they cheered for each other. They celebrated success. And they did it often. And it was just a part of their makeup. We hit the goal, we celebrate. We hit the milestone, we celebrate. You get promoted, we celebrate. And it's not just when we talk about, it's not just like the stuff, right? Or like the banquet and the trophies and the year-end thing. Trust me, a culture isn't in the year-end banquet. You can't have a place to work that's, a living hell for 364 days, but you better stick around for that holiday party, man. That's, one day a year. It's an open bar. Who's going to miss that, right? It's every day. Remember we talked about how do I feel every day when I wake up to come to work? So here are 4 steps that great leaders, great organizations sort of live by when it comes to how they appreciate each other, how they cheer for each other, how they root for each other. And it's this. They do it often. They do it often, right? If it's all about customer service, we talk about customer service. Nordstrom's talks about customer service ad nauseam. If they see good customer service, they recognize it. They do it now, right? They don't hesitate. The closer the recognition is to the behavior, the more likely it is to be repeated. Okay, so the closer it is to be, more likely it is to be repeated. I do it now, I do it often. Now, think about sports. Do it now. If I win the Super Bowl, I get the trophy now. They don't say, oh, go get changed and we'll have a banquet at the end of the year, right? No. I want my trophy now because that reinforces the behavior right now. Do it often. People say, well, you can overdo it. Those millennials, they want a parade just for showing up. Hey, if that works, give them a parade. But my point is if you do it right, you can't do it too much. Think of your personal life. I mean, how many of you are involved in a great personal relationship? Can you hear I love you too much? No, not if they mean it. So you got to mean it. And if you do it right away, it signifies value. I do important things now. I don't wait till the end of the week, the end of the month, the end of the year. If I do it often, it communicates that this is what's really important, right? Customer service, on-time delivery, innovation, whatever it might be, cost savings. That's what we talk about. That's what we celebrate. That's what we value, right? Now, be timely is another one, right? Again, make sure that not too much time goes by and be sincere, right? Mean it. And the sincerity is in the story and it's in the details. Don't just say, hey, Chris, great job. You rock. You're number one. Doesn't mean anything. Tell me the story. Sincerity comes in with saying, look, here's what Chris did. Here's why he did it. Here's the impact it had on the customer. Here's how it ties to our core values. That's the definition of customer service, and that's why Chris is so valued, and that's why we love him so much, right? 2-3 minutes, boom. Do it now, do it often, be specific, and be sincere, right? Tell me the story and be sincere. Well, that's root for each other. Let me close with this. Culture is the big differentiator. And if you don't consciously build the culture you want, a culture will build itself, and it's probably not the one you want. Make sure that you hire to culture. You can teach people how to do the job. Teaching culture is a little tougher. Make sure you got the right fit. If you're all about customer service and focusing on the customer, get people that love to do that, right? And then the last piece is, and this was a great little data point from our latest book, What Motivates Me, is when you create a great place to work and you feel great about work, and this was a University of California study, you are 150% more likely to be happy at home. Isn't that interesting? When you are miserable at work, trust me, you will take that misery, you will take it home, and you will make sure you share it with your family. It's just the way we are wired. So one of our noble causes, and why we are so delighted for the Institute, the IOC, to ask us to do this, and you'll be hearing from my co-author Adrian Gostick in another segment, but is by creating great places to work, we also create great places to live and to grow a family. And if there's one wish I would have for you as students, as you go out into the workplace, yes, build a great place to work. But don't just take these principles and keep them there. Bring them home, share them with your family in a positive way. Put 10 pennies in your pocket and decide you're going to have 10 positive interactions with your spouse or your girlfriend every day. You know, when something that happens that's great, celebrate it now. Be specific, be sincere, all those great things. And I would wish that for you, not just a great work life, but a great personal life. Study hard, hit the books, make your parents proud. Chester Elton, delighted to be with you. Good luck, Godspeed.